The day I buried my best friend, I wore blue. Not black, blue. Because that was his color. Every hoodie, every birthday card, every pen he somehow always lost. Nobody told me grief has a smell, old cologne on a borrowed jacket that never quite leaves your memory. I was 26, he was 24, and I stood at the edge of that hole in the ground thinking, the math is wrong. People aren't supposed to go this early. There must be a mistake somewhere in the paperwork of the universe. There was no mistake. This video is not about hope. It's not about silver linings. It's about what actually happened. What grief looks like at 2 a.m. when nobody's watching. What losing everything does to a person. And what I learned, not from books, not from podcasts, from the ground, from rock bottom, from gravesides and empty apartments and bankruptcy paperwork. I'm telling you this because nobody told me, and I needed someone to. Grief is not an emotion, it's a full-body system failure. A researcher at UCLA named Naomi Eisenberger discovered in 2003 that social pain, the pain of loss, activates the exact same brain regions as physical pain. The same part of your brain that fires when you break your arm fires when you lose someone you love. Grief is not weakness. It is your brain processing a real injury. The second thing nobody tells you, grief destroys your identity. When you're close to someone, you build a version of yourself inside that relationship. You are their person. You hold the shared history of 10,000 ordinary moments. When they're gone, that version of you has nowhere to exist anymore. You don't just lose them, you lose who you were with them. Real grief doesn't move forward, it circles. Ambushes you in grocery stores 3 weeks after the funeral because you turned down the cereal aisle and saw his brand on the shelf and suddenly you couldn't breathe. That happened to me on a Tuesday, between the cereal and the granola bars. I left my cart and sat in my car for 40 minutes. That is what grief actually looks like. And if you've been there, you are not broken. You are neurologically, chemically overwhelmed. There is a profound difference. Not the version from songs, the real version. The version that is sitting with someone at 3 a.m. when they're convinced their life is falling apart, even though you have work in 4 hours. The version that is choosing every single day to treat another person's happiness as seriously as your own. I loved someone like that once. We weren't perfect. Nobody who loves that deeply ever is. We fought about small things the way people do when they know each other well enough to aim precisely. We had weeks of comfortable silence and weeks of uncomfortable silence, and we learned, slowly, imperfectly, the difference between the two. She laughed at things before they were finished being funny. She remembered the names of strangers she'd met once, years ago. She kept plants that should have died months earlier alive through what I can only describe as sheer force of optimism. She made ordinary evenings feel like something worth keeping, and I was so busy building toward the future that I sometimes forgot to be in the present I was standing in. That is the thing about deep love that nobody warns you about. It doesn't announce itself as precious while it's happening. It just is. The Tuesday dinners, the long drives. And then one day, the later runs out. Not dramatically, the way a tide goes out. Gradually, then suddenly. You don't notice until your feet are no longer wet. It ended. And the silence that followed was a different kind of silence than anything I had known before. Not the comfortable kind, not the peaceful kind, the kind that has a shape. A specific, human-shaped absence that sits in rooms and follows you from one place to the next, and doesn't respond when you speak to it. I want to explain why love like that hurts the way it does. Because there is science to it. And the science is both devastating and ultimately beautiful. John Bowlby, a British psychiatrist who spent his life studying human attachment, found that we are not wired for independence. We are wired for connection. Our nervous systems literally co-regulate with the people we love. When you are with someone safe, someone you've loved for a long time, your heart rate, your stress hormones, your entire nervous system calibrates to their presence, which means when they're gone, through death or distance or ending, your body doesn't just miss them emotionally. Your body goes into withdrawal. The racing heart, the food that tastes like nothing, the inability to sleep, the hypervigilance, that constant background hum of wrongness, like a frequency you can't locate or turn off. That is your nervous system searching for the signal it was calibrated to receive, and finding only static. I lived in that static for a long time, and during that time, I made the mistake that most people make. I treated the love like a wound to close. I tried to outthink it, outwork it, outrun it. I filled the space with noise and activity and the performance of being fine because I didn't understand yet that what I was carrying wasn't a malfunction. It was the evidence of something real. Harvard University has been running a study on human happiness since 1938, 85 years, the longest study of human well-being ever conducted. The conclusion was singular. The quality of your relationships is the strongest predictor of a long, healthy, meaningful life. Not income, not career, not intelligence, your relationships, which means loving someone deeply, even when it ends in loss, is not naivety. It is not something to protect yourself from next time. It is not a mistake that a wiser version of you would have avoided. It is, quite literally, what your life is for. I know how that sounds when you're in the wreckage. I know how hollow it lands when you're still sleeping on your side of the bed out of muscle memory. But here is what I know now, on the other side of it. The love doesn't leave when they do. It stays in you, still looking for somewhere to go. And the pain of that specific relentless ache, is not a problem to be solved. It is the love itself, still alive, still looking for its address. The writer Jamie Anderson said it better than I ever could. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Hold that, because it changes everything about how you carry it. Loving someone deeply means handing them a weapon and trusting they will never use it. Sometimes they do, sometimes life does. And the devastation that follows is not proof that you loved wrong. It is proof that you loved real. And real, however much it costs, is the only kind worth having. The grief hadn't finished when the money started going. I had built something, a business, a reputation, a version of myself that felt stable. And then, the way real things fail, it unraveled. Not all at once, slowly. One bad decision compounding another. A market shift. A partnership that soured. Mornings where I'd look at bank statements that didn't seem real, and then the next week, they were worse. I lost the business. I lost the apartment. I lost the carefully constructed image of someone who had their life together. And I was not prepared for the silence that followed. Not from the world, from people, the ones who had been present and enthusiastic when things were going well. When I needed something, most of them were very busy. I learned something in that silence. You find out who loves you the moment you have nothing left to offer. The list gets very short and very valuable. Two researchers, Mullainathan and Shafir, found that financial scarcity doesn't just drain your bank account, it drains your cognitive bandwidth. The mental overhead of managing loss literally narrows your capacity for clear thinking, which means when you need to think most clearly, loss has made thinking hardest. I spent months convinced I was spiraling because I was weak, that I deserved it. That story, deserving your own suffering, is one of the most dangerous things a person can believe. It is also completely, factually wrong. Here is what I actually learned. Not the lessons that look good on a poster, the ones that cost something to know. Before the funerals, before the losses, I treated time like it was renewable. Like important conversations could happen later, they can't. People don't wait. And once you've seen that invoice, unpayable, final. Every ordinary day gets reweighted. Loss is the most honest audit of your life you'll ever undergo. Watch who shows up, watch who goes quiet, and remember both. Who am I when there is nothing to show for it? That question is terrifying. Find out what's left when everything is stripped away, because that, only that, is real. The research is consistent. Most people who reach a crisis point have spent significant time carrying their pain alone, behind the performance of being fine. That story costs lives. Ask for help, not because it's easy, because the alternative is unspeakable. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz, lost nearly everything, and concluded that the one thing that cannot be taken from a person is the freedom to choose what their suffering means, the meaning. That decision doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it a direction, and direction, even small and uncertain, is the beginning of everything. If you're watching this in the middle of your own loss, at midnight when you can't sleep, needing someone to say something real, you don't have to be okay right now. There is no timeline you owe anyone. The fact that you had 3 good days and now you're back at the bottom doesn't mean you failed, it means you're human. The fact that you're still here, that you made it through today, means something, even if you can't name what. Still here is enough. It is, in fact, everything. And whatever you lost, whoever you lost, it changed you. You can spend your life resenting that change, wishing yourself back to who you were before. Or you can ask a different question, not why did this happen to me, but who do I want to become because it did? That question won't make sense today, but hold it. Because at some point, in some quiet, ordinary moment you won't be able to predict, it will begin to answer itself. I've buried friends. I've loved deeply. I've lost everything. And I would do all of it again. Because the alternative is a life lived at a safe, careful, half-hearted distance from everything that actually matters. And that, if you're struggling, please talk to someone. You don't have to carry this alone.